Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people just call me Brett. Thanks for deciding to listen today. A little bit different podcast today. It's all weight loss related, keto diet related, healthy, limited fasting, all these things that make us healthier. It's related to that in a secondary kind of way, but I think it'll be very revealing to most people. I don't think most people have actually considered the numbers of why you will die and how you can greatly reduce your chance of dying from any of those things, which theoretically would help you live the longest amount of time possible. So we'll talk about that. First of all, I have no formal medical training. I'm not a doctor. Nothing I say is meant to be medical advice. You should consult a doctor for that. I'm also not giving you any specific weight loss advice for you. Anything I say in this podcast is my personal opinion or me relating my own personal weight loss and health journey. You shouldn't construe it as anything other than that. Always consult a doctor before beginning any weight loss or diet program, and of course for any medical related issues. Follow us on the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. The username is all Fat Guy Podcast for all of them, Fat Guy Podcast. And, of course, you can easily subscribe. If you're not subscribed and you use Apple Podcasts, on your iPhone device, or you already subscribe to a podcast on your Android device, you can find us wherever podcasts are just by searching for Fat Guy Podcast. And if all that's Greek to you and you don't understand any of that, the easiest thing to do is download the free Spreaker app, Spreaker, Spreaker. Download it for free. Search for Fat Guy Podcast on there. Hit the heart button, follow it, like it, subscribe it. You can view all past episodes and be notified of all new and upcoming episodes so you never miss a beat. So, why do people die? If we know why most people die, and the stats I'll be using today are all U.S. numbers, I'm assuming most people listening to this podcast live in the U.S. If we know why most people die, and if there are ways of preventing that, then we can greatly extend the odds of our life. I look at myself, and I'm in my mid-upper 40s, and I see how I lived up until the past 4 or 5 years, and that's going to have an impact on my life expectancy. If I look at my family history, my mother's side of the family was all cancer. My mom, who was one of the healthiest people I know, my mom probably ate healthier than anybody I've ever known personally. She just ate healthy. She just didn't eat crap. She didn't eat garbage. She was an active woman. She was, she was a pure woman. She never drank. She never smoked, any of that stuff. I mean, she became a diehard, devoted, very strict Christian at a super young age, and that carried through for her whole life. I mean, my mom often referred to my mom as one of the most naive people ever. She was a sweet woman and a very knowledgeable woman and a very brilliant woman, and but she was naive to a certain extent because she just never participated in things like that. And anyway, she died at a super early age. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at age 60, and she was dead by 65. And my father died at age 60 with heart disease, and his entire family is heart disease. So, on my father's side I have heart disease, on my mother's side I have cancer. Odds are one of those things will take me out, but that's not just for me, that's for everybody. So when we look at the numbers, and then we talk about, how your lifestyle and specifically what and how you eat plays into it, we can mitigate some of these things. I think just like in my mother's case, I don't think that you can ever say there's 100% chance you won't get something just because you lived right. Because my mom lived right in every sense of the word to the best of her ability, and it still got her. So, nothing is 100% life insurance policy. But I did a lot of studying on cancer during my mom's 5 years. I tried everything I could to come up with something to help save her, in addition to of course, to what the medical professional had. In all my study, the best I could find is that genetically speaking, cancers, it's only something like 5-6%. Well over 90% of cancers are all food and lifestyle related, is pretty much what brings them on, and that, the vast majority of them can be mitigated. So with all that being said, we'll jump into the numbers. So if we look at the top 10 causes of death, which make up the vast majority of deaths, once you get past the top 10, I mean, it's in the single digit percentage points or less, you know? So it's just wide varied freak things that you probably could never prevent, and so really you shouldn't even be concerned with them. I'm more concerned with the mass majority of deaths, and specifically the ones that I think that are mostly preventable. So, of the top 10 causes of death, there's only maybe one or two that I think aren't really preventable from lifestyle changes. One of them, maybe number 4. The number 4 cause of death is accidents. Okay, and if you be more careful in life and you're more aware of your surroundings, you could possibly bring the percent chance you die from accidents down. But it's not super proactive in terms of like changing your diet. So I'm leaving accidents out, but just know you could bring that down. That's why I always drive the speed limit, or maybe even a couple miles an hour slower. And I'm always scamming. I'm obsessive with the way I drive, and it'll be ironic if a traffic accident is what takes me out, especially the way I see everybody else drive. But I think you could do some things to mitigate the chance you'll die from an accident, but I'm leaving that one out. It's not food related. Influenza and pneumonia. Now, I think a portion of those are probably food related, but who knows what the percentage is. So I'm just going to leave that out completely. And probably more so pneumonia. I think I'd leave influenza out of that. But nevertheless, there's an argument that could be made that your immune system, which is food related to a great extent, would affect some of that. So, I understand that those aren't food-borne illnesses, but I think some attributes of death from them could be attributed to health, or how healthy you are, especially from a disease-fighting standpoint. How strong is your immune system? But nevertheless, I'm going to leave that out. And then the last one on the list is suicide. And again, even suicide, a percentage of those could be attributed to food, and I'm learning that more and more. There's so many people I'm finding now that have adopted either a ketogenic diet or a low-carb diet or even a carnivore diet where they eat nothing but meat, and have completely reversed their depression issues and struggles with depression and mental issues. One of those is Michaela Peterson. Her father is a pretty famous guy, Jordan Peterson, so you could look them up. But not just her, it's many others I've found. So even a percentage of those could be reduced potentially with food. Okay? But I'm going to leave those out because I don't think they are the majority. Your top 2, I don't think it should be any mystery what the top 2. Nearly 50% of people that die every year die from one of 2 things: heart disease or cancer. Now, I would submit to you that there's subcategories of heart disease that should be included in that. For instance, stroke is number 5, and I think probably the genesis of stroke comes from a similar place as heart disease. So, again, this will probably reveal how I'm not medically trained and would not use proper medical terminology and stuff. But in my opinion, those things are obviously highly related while not the same disease. And so from a prevention standpoint, I think the prevention aspect is very similar, with the exception of if it's something genetic. Then you have Alzheimer's disease. Well, more and more professionals are starting to call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. It is a sugar ability to process, and the cells run off and process sugar in a similar way in the brain as happens in the rest of the body. More and more they're finding. And then number 9 is kidney disease. And again, I don't know that how much percentage of kidney disease could be contributed to diet, but it's a lot. I would suspect it's way over 50%. So heart disease and cancer 1 and 2 are right at 50%. But when you add in stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and kidney disease, And then the last big one, which is diabetes, which is huge, 100%, unless you're a type 1 diabetic, and that means I'm not going to get into what causes type 1 diabetes, but it's always and often called juvenile diabetes, but you have it early for the most part, and it is because, again, I'm not going to get into it, but it's not food-borne. My dad was a type 1 diabetic. I'm very familiar with it. So I'm just talking about type 2 diabetes, but that's the number 7 killer, is type 2 diabetes. Again, that's a food-borne illness. That's what causes type 2 diabetes is food. That's it. Nothing else. Okay? Didn't genetics, none of that kind of stuff. So, out of the top 10 ways to die, the ones that are food-related are heart disease, cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and then to a certain degree, kidney disease, and then to a lesser degree, maybe some influenza and pneumonia. That really just leaves 1 or 2 out, okay? You're looking at well over 60% of the reasons people die coming from food. Well over 60%. The last one I'll mention is number 3, which is something that is also an activity-based. And if you put this one in here, this gets you up to about 70% of the reasons, 75% of the reasons people die. Number 3, chronic lower respiratory disease, which is COPD and other things like that, which primarily, in large part, come from smoking. So, just don't be an idiot and don't smoke. Now, I was an idiot and I smoked for 25 years. To my knowledge, I don't have anything like COPD now. Hopefully, I prevented it. Hopefully, I'm going to, not develop lung cancer from it or some other, but who knows? I mean, I have no way of knowing. I've been smoke-free for a little over 4 years now, and so I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. Nevertheless, that's another way you can not die from. What do you want to die from? You want to die from just being old. You just got so old, the body just couldn't go anymore, and you die peacefully in your sleep, in your 90s or low 100s. And not only that, but you felt pretty good leading right up to close to the end of your death because you're in reasonably decent health for somebody your age. I mean, they can stretch your life out in a hospital or in a care facility or even at home where you really aren't living, you're just alive and you can barely move and there's no function in your life. I mean, there's a lot of people that are dragging their lives out 5-10 years doing that, but I mean, that's not what we want, right? If you live to be 90, I want to be out going and doing things as an independent person at 89. I mean, that's my goal. So, heart disease, cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and to some degree kidney disease. And then you cut out the smoking, that gets rid of the chronic lower respiratory disease. You cut out about 75% of right at 72% maybe of the causes of death. So that brings us to the diet. Well, a ketogenic diet, a low-carb diet, it's not new, but it's just now finally being researched on a large-scale level. The reason is because back in the late 60s and then when you get into the 70s and you have Ansel Keys coming up with the heart health hypothesis and his fake bullshit research that he scammed everybody on, saying that saturated fat was causing heart disease and all this kind of stuff, which caused the entire country to go on a high-carb diet, which has led to most of these issues I've listed here. Just now, we've pulled back the curtain. Just recently, in the past 5 years or so, has the curtain been pulled back, and it's like, holy crap. We've been feeding everybody sugar for the past 40 years, and we wondered why everybody's dying. Sugar, make no mistake, sugar is not a food. I don't care if the FDA has announced it's a food that's generally regarded as safe to eat or not. It's not a food. It's a drug. It's processed nearly identically to the way other drugs like cocaine are processed. It starts from a wholesome plant type thing, and by the time they strip it down, highly concentrate it, super pack it together, it's this super one little part of a plant taken out, highly concentrated and densed down and crystallized into something that'll kill you. It's no different. Sugar is no different. In that regard, it's no different from cocaine, and they're both highly addictive. I mean, when you compare all the things that sugar does to you and cocaine does to you, it's nearly identical. They all kill you. They're all highly addictive. And they're both something you shouldn't be doing, and they're both extracted from plants in nearly similar ways. And that's what we went to. When the heart health hypothesis came along, you had this Ansel Keys bullshit research study about saturated fats, and they kept telling us to eat less and less. Oh, you got to eat less fat. And then, as a means to help us eat less saturated fat, they introduced all these fake fats that nobody had ever eaten in all of human existence. People had never extracted oil from soybeans, and had never extracted oil from corn, and had never extracted oil from safflower seed, canola. And all of human history never consumed those oils. Now it turned out what we know. Well, those things are highly inflammatory. All those, the Crisco, remember Crisco? Holy crap. Talk about trans fats out the yin yang. So they told us saturated fat was bad. So we did everything we could to get our saturated fat levels low. And that meant eating less healthy saturated fats like our grandparents did, and great-grandparents who hardly had any heart disease at all. And now we're all these fake oils, and our saturated fat levels, the natural wholesome fats that our species had eaten its entire existence was down to the minimum. And then what's left? How do you replace the calories? When you lower the fat down, you have to replace the calories or you'll die. Well, we replaced the calories with sugar. That's what we replaced them with. We dropped the fat levels down. If you look at graphs over time since the 70s, you'll see that protein consumption has been about the same. It's fallen off just ever so slightly. But protein consumption has been about the same. Fat consumption, down, 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 down. Sugar, carb consumption, up, 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 up. And then if you lay over that line, diabetes, heart disease, cancers, stroke, Alzheimer's. If you lay a chart over that line, they just match up perfectly. So the more sugar and carbs we've eaten, the more we've died, the more they told us we need to eat less fat. Well, the problem is the fat. You just got to cut the fat out. And it's not a matter of compliance. The general misconception has been throughout the decades is that people just didn't comply. But when you look at the research, you see that we did comply. As a species in the United States of America, our fat consumption, we did what they told us. We lowered it. Now, I don't think we ever got down to the levels they suggested, and thank God. I think they suggested less than 30% from protein or something, and I think we got it down to, as a nation, 32% or something. But we were trying to get it there. Thank God we didn't get it that much lower. On the other hand, the suggested carb consumption, we're way up there. We're good on that. And we're dying. So there's all this research now that's coming out. Finally, the curtain's been pulled back. And we're starting to see the complete, total dysregulation of the metabolic system and what happens. All the bad things that happen. The inflammation that happens. The problems that happen with the LDL in the transport process. The problems of the really what a lot of people are calling type 3 diabetes of the brain. And one of the first things I think that really brought this to light was, and I remember seeing this 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was this, right after social media first started, so I don't know when that would have been, 07, 08, 09, something like that. And you start seeing these posts about Alzheimer's patients that were eating a lot of coconut oil, and it was helping them. It wasn't curing it, but they were becoming more cognitive. It was restoring some of their cognitive function, and it was giving their families a little bit more time with them and a little bit more quality time with them before Alzheimer's took them out. And I think that was the first you started seeing about it. And then you learn that, well, what's in that is short-chain fatty acids, like MCT and other things. And then you see that you're encouraging your body to increase its output of ketones, which what happens when you take a medium-chain triglyceride. And so invariably, the brain starts running off of more of this type fuel, a byproduct of that called ketone bodies. And it runs more efficiently than it does off the sugar you've been overrunning it on. And it restores a little bit of clarity. Restores a little bit of cognitive function, or at least maybe slows down some of the cognitive degeneration. So all these things started showing up. And then the same thing started showing up with type 2 diabetes research, which led into obesity research. And then the work of Dr. Robert Lustig with his obese children. And that's all he dealt with was obese children. And he sees these children that are 9 years old, they got type 2 diabetes. Well, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes, and it used to happen after you turn 40. That's what they called it. You had juvenile diabetes, which was type 1. which is an actual disease. Something goes horribly wrong physiologically. And then you have type 2 diabetes, which is always called adult onset diabetes, and it typically happened after age 40. And while they didn't attribute it to food, I don't think we were completely stupid, even though they never really contributed to food. Lo and behold, now there's kids 9 years old, so doctor with type 2 diabetes. Well, you can't call it adult onset anymore. So Dr. Robert Lustig is somebody who's working with obese kids, and he figures it out rather quickly. And he starts doing papers on it, and he gives one of the best speeches I've ever seen. It's I can't think of the name of it. It's on YouTube. It's about sugar is poison or something. And you just start seeing all this research explode, and he's turned these kids' lives around, and this whole low carb thing, which who knew Atkins, the guy that was highly maligned back in the 70s and 80s, was right. Atkins was right. Atkins was right the whole time. And the people that went to his clinic knew he was right. He was reversing the type 2 diabetes and reversing the obesity and reversing the inflammation and debilitating arthritis pain in people. And so, turns out Atkins was right. The guy was much maligned as being a killer of people. This Atkins guy's killing people with these low-carb diets, and turns out he was right. But so the point is that nowadays, you are starting to see an aggressive move towards research of low carb diets on health, not just weight loss, but health in general. And we're finding that health outcomes are greatly increased in many areas of health with just reducing the carbs, getting rid of the sugar, getting rid of the stuff that was killing us. So you really can take control of your life and greatly reduce your chances of dying earlier rather than later just by just stop eating the sugar. Cut your carbohydrate level. And I'm not even saying, look, you may you're probably overweight if you're listening to this, but I do have people that aren't usually overweight listening to this podcast. You could certainly share it with them. There's skinny people dying from this all the time. Just because you're thin doesn't mean that you don't have metabolic dysregulation. Visceral fat is what causes it, and there's a lot of people that are skinny fat. So they have a high level of visceral fat, which is coming from all the sugar they eat, but for whatever reason, and there are several, but I won't get into them because that's not the point of this podcast, but they don't get huge and blow up like me and a lot of other people. They may have just a small amount of belly fat, but they look reasonably thin, so they're called, skinny fat. There's an acronym for it, and I can't think of what it is, but it's fat on the inside, skinny on the outside. And so they have all this visceral fat around their organs on the inside, so they have all the problems that a guy my size has medically. They just don't see it coming. And these are these people that you'll see him. He died at age 38 from a heart attack. How could he? He was so healthy, nobody saw it coming. And an autopsy revealed that inside his organs were all wrapped up with visceral fat. And so, look, it's something that you can't 100% prevent any form of death. But you can hugely, especially the younger you start. And that's why it's so important with kids. I know of 3 different parents. One of them is actually a family member of mine. But I know of 3 different parents that are trying so hard to raise their kids right. And they don't let them drink Cokes all the time. And they don't let them have sugar and sweets all the time. And the treats they do make them are of the lower carb version, and they're still tasty and delicious, but they have them on these, relatively healthy diets. It's real food. They're feeding them real food, and they're not eating out at McDonald's, 4 or 5 times a week, or at restaurants the other times of the week. They're actually preparing the food at home and knowing what's in it. And they have, and I know that some of them have issues with their family, talking about they're abusing their kids and they're mistreating their kids, and no. If you're one of the people that, as a kid, and you're letting them eat McDonald's all the time, and you're letting them eat sugar and drink Cokes all the time, and you can see their weights growing. I see these kids all the time. Now, when I was a child, I was considered a big child. My weight started coming on around 5 or something. And I was bigger than most other people in my school. And that time during the 70s and early 80s when I was younger, there just wasn't a lot of overweight kids. There was a couple of us in a class, and now it's half the class. But in my day, it was like a couple of us in the class, and we weren't even that big. Like I look back and I thought I was big, and I was big, and especially in high school when it just keeps doubling down every year. When you have this problem, it just keeps doubling down. So by high school I was pretty large, although I would kill to be that size now, and I'm getting there. But nevertheless, it's pretty large. But you look at kids now. I look at kids now. I saw a kid in God, where was I at? I was in the public shopping center, and this family with their kid was going in a tropical smoothie, and he was one of those kids that didn't have a neck. He was so big he didn't have a neck, and I don't know how big he was, how old he was. He was like 10, 11 or something like that. He didn't even have a neck. He was so big. You know how big those kids are, and he was just big and square, just a big fat square. And Mom probably took him in there and got him one of those smoothies, which is all hopped up on sugar. Now, am I saying there's not a reasonably healthy smoothie that a kid could have in tropical smoothie? Well, they have a couple, but you'd have to request them to not put sugar in it, and it'd have to be one of the greens ones, one of the ones that's mostly greens. It may have a little bit of apple or a little bit of banana or something in it, but it's mostly just greens. And you tell them don't add sugar in it, and it would be somewhat healthy, but there ain't nobody going in there and drinking that. Nevertheless, so his parents are raising these kids like that. They don't want to hurt their feelings. Oh, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to hurt little Susie, little Johnny's feelings because they're overweight. Well, you're killing them. You're causing them. They're gonna have a life like me. They're gonna have a life where they're not able to be as connected to the world as they should be. And then by the time they hit their 30s, it's going to start affecting all areas of their life. And then by the time they get their 40s, it could get severe as mine got, to where it literally was all I could do to get out of a chair days. I was just so big. Just so big. Like just miserable and big and unhealthy and on my way to dying. You're not doing your kids any favor. Look, you can be a loving, supporting, caring, not hurting your feelings parent and get their health right. If you don't train your kids, first of all, if you don't educate yourself, and then secondly, you don't pass that information along to your kids, how are they ever going to know? They're destined to fail. Parents like, oh, it's your responsibility to teach them whatever. Teach them how to do right. Teach them how to be good people. If you're a churchgoer, you teach them how to love Jesus. You teach them all these things, but nobody believes you need to teach your kids how to eat right. So, is a ketogenic diet right for a kid? No, I don't necessarily not know, but not all these sugars. I think it's been proven that a low-carb, real food diet, which is mostly made up of real foods, tons of vegetables, good healthy cuts of meat, and all these processed carbs and stuff are out, as a rare occasional treat or something. Once a week as a treat or something. Maybe once a week you let them have a Coke. Maybe once a week you let them have a milkshake. That's it. You don't have milkshakes every day. You don't drink Cokes every day. That's why we're all fat. That's why all of us that are in our 30s or 40s are fat. It's the Cokes every day. It's the milkshakes 2 or 3 days a week. It's the McDonald's French fries, 4 or 5 times a week. Jesus. So, do it for yourself. Do it for your kids. You really can change your life. And if you're an adult, you need to go low carb, minimum, keto at best. And it's not a diet. You're not on a diet. It's you're changing the way you eat for the rest of your life because you want to prolong your life and be healthy. Is it easy? Some parts of it are easy, and other parts aren't. I continue to move forward, but it's always been a struggle off and on because I just have such a lifetime of this. And suffering with bouts of grief/depression off and on over the past year have caused me to lose my way at times. I just came from one of those. Nearly 2 months of losing my way. But by God, I'm back on. I'm back strong. We're back going. Ain't slowing down. I'm determined to get as healthy as I can before I die. I may die next week. I don't know. I abused my body. I smoked 25 years, and I was morbidly obese for most of my adult life. So who knows how much damage I did and how much can be reversed? I don't know. The few tests I've had give me, some thoughts maybe that I might possibly have a decent chance of turning it around. I had my coronary artery calcium score about a year ago, and it was 6. So 0 is the best, but 6 is pretty low considering. Considering how I've lived, I was very happy with 6. And I'm hoping I can bring it down to 5, 3, 2, 1. All right, I've rambled enough on this podcast. I hope that it helps you in some way. Take control of your health. Take control of your life. And for God's sakes, if you have kids that are fat, don't hurt their feelings. Figure out a way to be positive and loving and caring and raise them up in the way they should go. And that don't just mean reading the Bible. Raise them up in the way they should go means the way they should go with their health, the way they should go with their food, the way they should go with how they treat other people, the way they should go with discipline, the way they should go with their work ethic, the way that, the way they should go is the way they should go with everything. It's incumbent. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. I really appreciate it.